Hello, people! Thanks for joining me. I'm Scotty D, and this here old Gretsch Double Anniversary, we're going to try to get it playing good. It's got really high action, it's got a pretty bowed neck, and it's got a saddle that's decked all the way down as far as it can go. It also has a broken tremolo and some other issues, like this red paint. So let's have a look. So with the StewMech Precision Straight Edge measuring the relief, I get 20 thousandths of an inch in easily. That's too much relief. But there's also a bit of a ski jump going on up here. So I take a shorter one, like a 12 incher, and I can get a 16 thou in there. Anyways, we're going to look at the truss rod nut. That ain't right. Okay, see how the metal is deformed around the bottom here? This is never going to perform well with this round shape to it. We have to flatten this out or just replace it completely. And this teeny little washer that they got here, this was pushing on the truss rod cover, deforming it, and it's almost like they glued it in place. I might have to get I got it. What's going on in here? So for this rescue to work, I want to come in and make sure that none of this compressed wood is pushing up against the threads of the truss rod. So I'm just going to cut it away a little bit. Now this wood up here is really loose, almost ready to flake off. This is not responding real good to the back bow that I'm forcing on upon it. So I'm going to fit it with this brand new thick washer from the Truss Rod Rescue Kit and this brand new acorn nut. I'm going to lube the washer and the nut. It's like bringing your guitar in for an oil and lube. He's lubing a nut. Oh my God, call the police. That's illegal. Go backwards till it pops in, then forwards. Heat pressing the neck. Heat press is good. I don't know. Let's crank a little bit more on this. See this bar clamp? I'm going to force that neck into a little back bow and tighten that nut. So look here, I tightened that sucker. I had it back bowed and tightened, and I can still get, it still has relief, bad relief. So I told him when he was here if I might have to heat press this neck to get it to respond. And if that doesn't work, and truss rod rescue doesn't work, and your truss rod's bent or whatever happened, I'm not going to go through with the refret and the neck reset and charge you $1,000, have you come back in 2 months and still have a guitar that's unplayable because it's got a bowed neck. First things first, let's see if we can fix this neck. Alright, well the heat press of the neck was a success. While it was still clamped in the middle, I tightened the truss rod and I took it out of the clamp, put the strings back on, and we've got a dead flat neck, maybe 5 thousandths of an inch relief. So before I take take my measurements, we're going to take the from neck to body joint to the bridge. We're going to take the measurement from the total length of the heel, and then the amount that we'd like to lower the action, we're going to double that for the amount to lower the saddle. But before I take that measurement, I want to raise the saddle, the thumb wheels. I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to raise it so that it's something like, that it looks like I've got some adjustability going on, I don't want it sky high because these pickups are not adjustable. They're not height adjustable. They're just bolted right down to the body, and that's where they stay. But this is where I'd like it, just to get a visual on there. And the action's still sky high, even though I got a completely straight neck. The action looks like it's still like 10/64ths at least. So let's write it all down, and then we'll calculate how much we'll be removing from the heel. Let me rephrase that. I took the actual measurement. It's 9/64ths. Okay, I want it to be 4/64ths. That's a difference of 5/64ths. So I want to lower this 5/32. This is the number I want to use. 5/32 in decimal inches is 0.1563. In millimeters, it's 3.964. So that's my first measurement. Second measurement will be the length of the heel, and then we'll divide that by this distance between the neck to body joint and the bridge itself. And then we'll come up with the amount that we're going to trim from the bottom of the heel to get our new neck angle. If I go over this enough times, it'll start to sink in. But this is the amount I want to lower my saddle to get a good action of 4/64ths. 0.1563 times the length of the heel, 2.37, which is about 2 3/8, divided by the distance from the neck to body joint to the bridge. That's 11 inches, 11 3/8. And I come up with this decimal number. I multiply that by 25.4 to get the millimeter measurement. 0.83. It's almost always the same on almost every neck reset. I'll take a little bit of lacquer retarder on a small paintbrush and paint all around the heel to body joint, including the area around the heel cap and around the plug. This plug hides a giant wood screw. If the screw doesn't come out, the neck does not come off. The heel cap was easy to remove. The ebony plug is not so easy to remove. I was hoping to remove it and reuse it, because I did actually get to do that. It was at Chet Atkins, Nashville, and the plug, it wasn't on the heel, it was on the back of the guitar. So I warmed up the plug with a soldering pen and tried to pull it out, but that was to no avail. So I ended up doing it the barbaric way, with a center punch, drilling some holes, and a little hammer. And I think banging on this area with the hammer could actually help loosen and break apart that old hide glue joint, because this neck came off as good as I would have hoped. Definitely want to make sure I get all of the glue and wood out from around this screw. And when that screw starts to back out, that is a big sigh of relief. This is the Stu-Mac truss rod adjustment wrench for a vintage Fender. Works out perfect for the Gretsch heel screw. Oh, I didn't give you a video of that heel screw, but I'll show it to you later. It's about 2 inches long. It's really important to break apart all the lacquer around the joint with the X-Acto saw, scalpel, X-Acto blades. I even go around it. I heat up the joint, wiggle it a bit, and then go around it again, because it seems like sometimes when you warm it up, things kind of get sticky in this area, and none of the heat really makes it
all the way out to the outer edges. I was worried that this binding was going to start chipping and flaking off, so I filled it in with some Bindall mixed with some binding flakes and a little bit of dirty amber stain. I like to take mineral spirits around the frets. It seeps down in along the tang and the wood or the fret slot, and it lubricates the fret so I can pull it out a little easier. Either way, these frets did not come out easy. I had to go across the length of each fret twice, once without the fret guard and once with the fret guard. But luckily, I had no chip out on the old rosewood. It's always good when you retain your wood. I mark the base side of each fret so I can reinstall them in the proper orientation. Now when you drill the 14th or the 15th fret holes, you want to go perpendicular with the fretboard. And you want to come in 9 millimeters from the edge, perpendicular with the fretboard. Now this neck is made of 3 pieces, so I want to stay away from the center seam as much as possible. I just want to keep the heat around the edges. And because there is the screw hole, I could go into that with some probes, but that is right on the glue seam or glue line, and I like to just put a little bit of water as it heats to keep the rosewood from scorching and turning black. Other than that, I'll take this one and move it over to the treble side. I'll just leave these other two as right where they're at there. And starting to get warm. Feels like it's got some movement going. Now the fretboard extension with that big spacer you see there, that is not glued down to the body at all. Here we go. Big shim. Big old hardened piece of glue. Oh, but the probe was drilled right through that chunk of glue. You can see the charred markings. Well, that was nice. There's just that one little chip of maple came off, but the center seam is good. That was my main concern is keeping that center seam glued up, because the first double anniversary that I pulled the neck on, there was a lot of steam shooting out through this hole at first, and I was a rookie. I didn't realize that could delaminate, and it was a lot messier than this. So I'm glad I didn't use any steam due to that fact that there's a hole right here where a lot of steam can shoot through. Next I take paper towels, wet paper towels, and wrap them around the male and female portion of the dovetail and let it set for about 30 minutes. And I come back and I scrape all that glue up, and it really softens the glue up to the point where you don't need to use a chisel or nothing. You can just basically wipe it off. But and there's the female side, and this binding chip was already there. I mean, I'm lucky none of the binding flaked off, because usually on these hollow body jobs the binding's the first thing to go. I want to wedge something in here just to get that to press against there a little more firmly. Next I'll pull the remaining frets from the fretboard. Turns out it really didn't matter whether I used the mineral spirits or not, or the soldering pen or not, so I just pulled them out dry, and it's easier on my lungs anyways, because some of that stuff ends up going up into your nose. Turns out this red paint was fingernail polish or something, because it dissolved with lacquer thinner But I didn't want to use lacquer thinner to remove it because I would end up removing all the surrounding original lacquer in the process, so I think scraping it off is the best bet. Now I make this cut to help reduce the bump at the necked body joint on the fretboard side of things. After I cut through the top of the dovetail there, I'll warm up the area and clamp it real tight, see if I can coerce the ski jump out of this fretboard. I'll use a silicone heating pad. I'll clamp down to the underside of the spacer and heat gun on the fretboard side of things. I'll put it in a clamp. After getting it out of the clamp, it still had a bit of a hump, so I'm going to do a little light sanding, maintaining the 12-inch radius to the fretboard as I go, and get this board ready for some new frets. After cleaning out all the fret slots of dust and debris, I'll cut each fret to length and nip it the tang. This fretboard has binding on it, so you have to take the tang off close to the edge. And then I learned from Ian Davlin to hold the fret upside down in a wooden block so that you can clean off the remnant of what's left of that tang and get a nice flush bottom to the crown. I inject warm fish glue into each fret slot with a syringe, spread it around with the 0.008 of an inch feeler gauge, and then I hammer in the frets. Notice how I bent the ends of the frets down a little extra? That's because the binding has shrunken back over the years, and it sits a little bit below the surface of the rosewood. After the glue cures, I'll also go in and wick a little bit of fill and finish thin on the edge of each fret. And then, after accelerating, I'll nip the edges. Now, this is in the Proppers Guitar Workstation, so I don't have to worry about the fret ends falling onto my workbench. I just place a garbage can underneath the workstation, and all these little fret ends fall into the trash. And then, since I'm right-handed, I swivel the workstation and continue on. I actually use both hands on this thing. So after the fret ends are cut, I bevel with the snap file. It comes with a special file where the teeth are perpendicular to the length. They're at a right angle to the length of it, and it does not slip or slide off the edge. Then I use the fret dressing file, fret end dressing, to take that sharp corner off the bevel. I go down with my right hand, and then I repeat with my left hand. And then there's the problem of the sharp fret end. The 90-degree corner has to be softened slightly, and this I do kind of backwards. But again, this workstation is nice because you can swivel it. Then I take 220, 320, and 400 grit stick-it sandpaper on a craft stick and soften everything a little bit more. Now I'm ready to change that neck angle by taking that 0.83 millimeters off the edge of the heel. Or that, I should say, take the 0.83 millimeters off the end of the heel. But I'll need to undercut the heel before. Just sharpen my chisel. This hard rock maple is it's okay for chiseling or shaping, only if you have a really sharp chisel. And you probably want to keep your fleshy part of your hand away from the edge of this maple because it's sharp. These mahogany shims they put in there at the factory are pretty much useless. I mean, they are the softest wood. I don't know if you can tell just how easy this is flaking off of here, but they may as well just jam some toothpicks in there. It would have worked better than this crap. Just gonna get rid of the rest of it with a chisel. And I'll be replacing this with the hard maple shims. I'll glue them on with gel super glue. Just gonna get rid of that mahogany with a rasp and a file. And it should be a nice surface to glue to. The gel control super glue and a maple shim. The maple shims are about 20 thousandths of an inch. Sometimes I have to double them up. I use some Glue Boost fill and finish around the edges of this heel since we're missing a lot of the paint. I started dropping it in ahead of time. I'll be sanding that back and getting it smooth before I put on some new finish that'll look good. Now that I got the new heel shape roughed in, I can do 2 or 3 sandpaper pulls per side and string it up and see how it plays.
Alright, before gluing it all into place, I lock it into this here, pushing up against the heel, holding the body down, and string it up to pitch. Check the action at the 12th fret, check the relief in the middle, and I make a few adjustments as needed.
Next, I use room temperature fish glue to reattach the neck to the body. A little bit on the male side of the dovetail. And a little bit on the female side of the dovetail. Get a little bit on the top also, right in the corner where the fretboard extension touches. The extension is elevated over the rest of the body, but it should touch just right in the corner. I love the smell of fish glue in the morning. There was one step that I did not film, and that was the trimming of the maple shims. I had to sand those a little bit to get a good snug fit. Now, I think this one bar clamp will be good enough to hold it in place while the glue cures. And then we'll reinstall that big fat wood screw. I put the guitar back into the Propper's guitar workstation with pressure against the heel and that one clamp holding the neck onto the body. There's no support under the headstock though. That's just dangling in space. I added a little bit of this JB weld to the broken Bigsby to see if it would hold. Unfortunately, it did hold until I put string tension on it. As soon as it popped. Maybe we'll get a new Bigsby someday. So I ended up putting a wood dowel into the neck block to plug the original hole. And now I need to re-drill. I like to put a good amount of beeswax on here and thread it on in there. Yes, sirree, bobber. It's going back in. I had to re-drill it because I doweled the body part. I left the original hole through the dovetail, but the body area I doweled it because I figured the angle changed a little bit and we'd be better off just drilling a brand new hole. So a little bit of that wax just squeezed out around there. That's fine. I cleaned that beeswax out. Now I've taken some paste wax and I'll get that on the screw because I'm going to glue in the new plug and I don't want to permanently glue the screw into place. I just want to glue the plug into place. Okay, now this will be my plug. It's just a piece of poplar dowel that I thinly sliced it on the bandsaw. Now I'll taper the edges slightly on the disc sander so it fits in there nice. And once I can pop it in there, I'll shape it and paint it. Here's that beeswax I was talking about. I keep it in this little snack bag just in case I need to grab a bite. No, just kidding. So I'm going to taper this dowel piece. This black-brown marker will keep me on the kind of on the down low as to which side is up, because as I taper it, I don't want to lose track of which side's tapered which way. And I'll just have to keep going back and forth till it fits in. After I figured I was getting pretty close on the machine, I just went to a little hand file and did a little tapering. And now it's a nice little fit I got going right here. It's the press fit. It doesn't even go in all the way. It's a little proud of the surface. So it's perfect. I'm going to get some tight bond wood glue and press it in. Same Q-tip I was just using for the wax, I'll just use the other side of the tip for the glue. And that's too messy. I was watching on a woodworking show recently. It says if you leave your two glued surfaces out for a certain period of time before you stick them together, that it actually helps strength of the bond, which I thought was kind of cool. Okay guys, come back in an hour or two and file that smooth and start putting in some CA glue. Next we'll take some of these micro files, or what do they call them, Swiss files? Really fine-toothed files. Actually, I wasn't getting anywhere with that one, so I used a rasp just to take the bulk of it away. A couple high spots. There was actually one low spot too, because I ended up tapping it with a hammer before, when the glue was still wet. I tapped it with another dowel and a hammer just to seat it as good as it could be seated, and I pressed it down a little too much right in this area, so I'm putting some Glue Boost Thick here. There's the fill and finish blue. It doesn't really say what viscosity it is on the bottle, but it's the thick stuff, and I give it a little squirt of the Glue Dry Accelerator. Cures in seconds. Alright, now that we're to third base, I'll go back to my small files, and to get the home plate, I roll up I take a little 120 grit sandpaper, some people call this the shoe shine sanding but it's basically belt sanding. And then I roll up a piece at 220, just like the old days. And do a little shoe shine belt sand. Notice I'm losing a little bit of the original color, which is just too bad. It's just gonna happen. If you're gonna get flush, you're gonna remove a little bit of the existing. I like to take a little bit more of that fill and finish from Glue Boost. This time I'm using the Ultra Thin, which is now available at Stuart McDonald. It's very nice that they became a distributor of that product. This step, I cannot express how important it is to clean the entire area that you're going to put clear finish on, or color, or whatever you do. Before you do it, just clean, clean, clean. I like to take naphtha and a gray Scotch-Brite pad and scrub that dirt off. Just look at the side of the guitar next to the strap buttonhole. See how there's like decades worth of filth on this thing, and it's all over the neck too. So after the gray Scotch-Brite pad, I switch over to a cotton ball. You can see the dirt coming off. It's that yellow stuff. It's finger grease and grime, nasty stuff. But this is going to prevent a lot of witness lines where the new finish meets the old finish. It's a problem that's always been a thorn in everybody's side, the witness line problem, and I'm really good at cleaning, so I pretty much eliminate that from my projects. The Mohawk black brown paint pen or marker works really good on this color situation. Took up 3 coats of this black brown marker application before it started to actually become almost invisible. I couldn't tell where the plug was anymore after about the 3rd coat. I figured I wouldn't be able to decide whether I was going to need to mix up a color or maybe just spray some dark walnut from a Mohawk can. Get one of those rattle cans out. Ended up that wasn't necessary. Remember that where that red paint was, that fingernail polish? I'm trying to put in some brownish red, and there was a couple dings and paint chips missing, so I went with this teeny tiny paintbrush and tried to fill it all in. I applied some clear finish and waited a week, and now I'm going to go in with some 1500 wet sandpaper over the entire project here. I ended up going all the way up the neck, right about up to the headstock, because it's I ended up touching up some color all the way up. There were just a few spots that were really bothering me. I mean, look at the binding. It's not like we have to get this thing perfect. I go 1500, 2000, and then 3000 Trizact with Simple Green as a lubricant. Simple Green is a soapy water. It's a household cleaner similar to Windex, but it's like an environmentally safe green product. Simple Green. Scrub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub. I get it all scrubbed up, wiped off, and then I polish.
Ultra Cut 105.
Now I move on to the final fret dressing. I'm going to soften the bevel with the fret end dressing file. Right hand, left hand. On this fret installation, there were only 3 frets that were high. So instead of leveling the entire fretboard, I just spot level those 3 frets. And I use a diamond file to take the file markings off. Then I'll take a 3-corner file and recrown it. Those 3. It leaves it pretty smooth. I like to take 220 grit on a craft stick and finish off those edges. And then I go with 320 and 400. This is the Stick It sandpaper. It sticks right to the craft stick. Statistics show that there's only 1% of the population that polishes their frets with the grain of the fretboard, and I'm one of those. It prevents me from having to tape off the fretboard. So I don't use tape. Saves me a lot of time. And as long as I go with the grain, I don't scratch up the wood. I go against the grain when I do my final steel wool. And that's why I'm using a fret guard, so that I don't scratch up the rosewood, the cross grain scratches. After steel wool, I use naphtha to clean. Look at this gray fret dust. Yep. That's another reason I use gloves. I don't like that gray fret dust. We'll need to moisten this board with some Dunlop lemon oil. This has not been hydrated since I sanded it, and that was weeks ago. Yes, weeks ago. These jobs take a while. It's not one of those wham bam thank you ma'am repairs. And finally, I'll glue in the nut. A lot of people say you shouldn't glue in the nut, but look at this. In this case, you have to glue in the nut. There's nothing to hold it there. I always glue in the nuts. I don't care. And for through saddles on acoustic guitars, I always glue them up. They glued them at the factory, so I glue them in my shop. These really are fun guitars to play, and I appreciate you hanging around. I know it seems like we've only been here for 40 minutes, and that I've been working on this for a week, but I've really been working on it for like 4 or 5 weeks. It really takes a long time when you're putting new finishes on guitars. I was getting worried there at one point that the little dowel was being completely camouflaged, in that, like, if someone needed to reset this neck in the future, they wouldn't be able to see it. But then after I wet sanded for a while, I started sanding through, which actually looks kind of cool. And you can start to see the outline of it. And I think it's the responsible thing to do. You don't want someone to get into a neck reset and then have to find out that there's a hidden screw somewhere. So this is like phase 1 of this guitar repair. The owner gave me a laundry list of stuff that he wants done. There's still a pick guard that needs put on. There's a truss rod cover that we need to figure out what to do. The tuners, there's one tuner that's different than the rest, and he might want to change out this bridge, but I've got it
I've got it perfectly lined up now and everything. It's responsibly high too. I mean, it's not high, and the reason for that is because these pickups are kind of quiet. They're high-low-trons and they're not real loud, so I want to keep the strings close to them. I have 4/64 action at the 12th fret, and it's real comfortable. Appreciate you hanging around. Catch you later.